looks like my audio, my visual, all my stuff is running. It's supposed to be. So I'm just showing my. Am I supposed to be showing that? That's alright. Okay. Hello. Looks like everything is working correct. I have my audio, I have my visual. Alright. That's great, because sometimes this doesn't work the way it's supposed to, but looks like I'm all prepared today. Well, I hope anybody who's watching, if you live within the States, you had a great Thanksgiving, and if you live anywhere else, but I just hope you had a great week. So today I'm going to be working on reviewing the latest chapter and some of the chapters before that. I'll skim through it real quick. In addition to that, I'm going to review, not necessarily review, but like just look at one of my older theories. I come up with a lot of theories, and sometimes I forget them. Not like I just completely forget them, but I haven't watched or thought about them in so long that when I look at them back, I have new ideas and new ways of looking at how the theories could, lay out within the story's future. So because of that, I thought, well, maybe I should watch them live and like just give live commentary on what I'm thinking of the latest, comparing my old stuff to the latest chapters. I'm going to show the chapter on screen. Now I have to put a filter over it because if you want to see the unedited, untransformed media, you gotta go to the source, which it's free. Just go to viz.com, look for Shonen Jump, and you'll find free chapters of the latest 3 of One Piece and many others that are in the current rotation of Shonen Jump. And if you want to just get access to all the chapters, I think it's only $3 a month or something like that. It's really cheap. You just get access to all the chapters whenever you want. You hop on the website or the app, and there's that free promo. Alright. I won't have this filter up when I'm watching my own videos because, well, they're my own stuff, but so this chapter is titled Shimotsuki Kozaburo, someone we've only heard by name up till now. We've heard of this person in the story itself when Tenguyama talked about him, and he even came up in an SBS where something that's kind of out of character for Oda, he started talking about the backstory of stuff that was relevant to the current story in an SBS, and it's sort of being told now in the chapter finally. But someone pointed out that it's very weird that they would put Tashigi on the Oda would put Tashigi on the cover of the same page that has Shimotsuki in the title. Sort of either he's just messing around or he's trying to actually point out that maybe she has a connection to the Shimotsuki, specifically how similar she looks to Kuina. Alright. So from last chapter, Enma's kind of acting up for Zoro, unleashing way too much power for him to keep up with, really. I mean, there's 2 problems. 1, it's releasing power without Zoro intending to, and 2, it's too much for Zoro to keep up with. Those 2 combinations are a really bad thing. So King is just messing around. He's really toying with Zoro, and that makes sense because we've known from the very beginning, even before we saw King fighting, that he's a very sadistic in nature person. So it's no surprise that a sadist would just mess around with their opponent the way King is doing to Zoro. So Zoro stabs King, which triggers some kind of explosion that King has no problem using because he just has that strong of defense, most likely because of arm and haki, in combination with whatever his race is, which the 2 might have a connection. So Queen says that Queen is just a resident Lunarian lore teller. That's literally the whole point of Queen and Sanji even showing up in this chapter for the most part. It's just for Queen to say, oh, he's a Lunarian, he's super strong. They were once referred to as gods. He says something funny though. He says, go ask a history book. So I'm wondering if he's saying that literally, or is he saying that sarcastically? Because if it has anything to do with the celestial dragons as to why the Lunarians are wiped out, which it seems to involve them, well then it would be erased from history, because that's how they do things. The whole reason there's an entire century that is voided out of history. So I'm very curious. Maybe like there is history books referring to Lunarians. But the thing about Lunarians referred to as gods that's really stands out to me, because I have this theory about, when I think about it, I don't have to be behind the red filter. It sticks out to me because I have this theory about how enlightenment can lead a hockey master to getting power like that of a devil fruit, power like that of a god. You know, it's called a devil fruit, but perhaps it's called a devil fruit because it gives you the power of what is the antithesis of the devil, which is a god, but at a price or as a cost, you know, similar to doing a deal with the devil. So yeah, these Lunarians may have been a very enlightened race, and they were able to master hockey to a point where they could do the things that I'm talking about, which is like replicate the powers of devil fruits. And when you think about it, what does King do? Well, King is an ancient Zoan, which obviously are rare, but the only special thing about them is that they're assuming the forms and powers of animals that are extinct from a time where those animals were stronger than the average. You know, a dinosaur is much stronger than a chicken. So that's just what makes them special. They're really strong. They have really tough skin and scales and hide and whatever. So why is it that someone like King, who only has an ancient Zoan, can use fire? Why is it someone like King can make himself stretch? Now, one answer could be like Queen, where it's, you know, mechanical and just has to do with science. That is possible. I wouldn't rule that out, especially since Queen is on his team, so Queen could just do experiments on King, give him abilities and stuff. That's very, very possible. Another thing is maybe he goes a different route than Queen. You know, they could be like shown two different ways things can come about, where Queen goes the science route and maybe King goes the more spiritual route. Or, you know, personal journey. And you can even see that shown in Sanji's current story and character development, where he's like, he could go the science route like Queen, but it seems he's gonna go more the other route, where it's his own personal journey and self-discovery and blossoming of his hockey. But yeah, I'm not gonna go too on about that, but I will say this: I have a theory coming out very soon, and it coincidentally could be connected to the most recent movie that's going to be coming out, called One Piece Red. I'm coming out with a theory called the Red Sea. This is something that I've been talking about for quite a while now. If you look at future topics that I've been talking about for about like 2 months now, like videos I want to make, these are videos I'm going to make. I just recently released the Where is Kaido's Poneglyph. That was only a minute long. All of these are going to come out though. So, does hell exist in One Piece? Well, I was going to make a theory about hell, aka the Red Sea. And I just think it's such a cool coincidence, could have nothing to do with each other, but there is coming out One Piece Red. And maybe, weirdly enough, that could be have something to do with the Red Sea, which could represent hell. Anyway, let's move on. So, Zoro uses his strongest one-sword style attack. I mean, once you use that and it doesn't work, Zoro's, you know, in a really tough spot. I don't think he's gonna find a 2-sword style attack that's gonna accomplish much more. Like, he's gonna have to use something that is either 3-sword or 9-sword style that's gonna defeat King. But I could see a 2-sword style shining through and getting the victory because of one single thing, and that's the fact that the Wado Ichimonji and Enma are both forged by the same blacksmith. That's the only reason I could think that maybe he would use a 2-sword style attack to win. But as we see toward the end of the chapter, he's using all 3 swords. So it's most likely going to be 3-sword, but don't be too surprised if it's a 2-sword style. But yeah. We get flashbacks. This is interesting. You don't see a whole bunch of flashbacks like this in One Piece. This is like reminiscent of Naruto for me. Seeing this many flashbacks in one chapter. I'm sure Oda welcomes these many flashbacks because he doesn't have to draw these panels. And probably why we've been getting so many chapters in succession. But yeah, I don't mind the flashbacks too much. It's just I do so much One Piece research for all my videos. I got so many of these things so solidified in my mind. I don't even have to like look at them in flashback form. But this, I like seeing this a lot, particularly because I have made theory 2 years ago. It was November of 2019. 2 years ago, I made a theory talking about the swords in One Piece, specifically the cursed swords. And the conclusion I came to in that very first video, there were really 2 main things in those videos. 1, what are cursed swords? And 2, why do I think cursed swords became the way that they became? So one of the things that I said in that video just got confirmed in this chapter. The first thing was, why are cursed swords considered cursed? And I say it in the video. I straight up say at one point, cursed swords aren't actually cursed, which is something the blacksmith in this, Kozaburo, I believe his name is, said cursed swords also not cursed. So that was one big confirmation for that theory. All I need is a second confirmation. But basically, cursed swords aren't cursed. They're simply just testing whoever is using the sword. You got to live up to the sword's will, the sword's purpose, and that is 1, to cut people down, and 2, to be a good swordsman. Those are the 2 things. So if someone wields a sword and they're not strong enough, they don't have strong enough conviction, they're not a good enough swordsman, they don't really want to cut people down. Someone like Tashigi, I doubt would be great at using a cursed sword because of her nature. Even as great as a swordsman as she is, she would be better off using a sword like the Wado Ichimonji than Enma, because it's just not in her nature to try to wield a sword like Enma. You gotta kind of have to be somewhat bloodthirsty, like Zoro. But yeah, I'm not gonna go into too much detail in these flashbacks. Not even so much Kozaburo, because this is stuff we already knew. And Oda answered this in SBS. So, as cool as it is to see it in the chapter, and there's nothing too surprising. We've known about all of this stuff already. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the end of the chapter. Once you get past the flashbacks, Zoro's like, well, this sword is testing me. It's not a curse. I just have to live up to this expectation. So I either gotta, 1, stop wielding it, or 2, toughen up and match the power that it wants for me. It's like, I can't keep using this much haki or else I'm gonna die. But then he's like, well, that's kind of the point. What greater conviction than putting your life on the line? So he's like, well then screw it. I'm just gonna pour all my haki into it. And it looks like he's gearing up for either a burst of attacks or one last attack, because there's no way he can keep on. He can't do the long game anymore. He can't draw this out, because as tough as he is, he still has his limit. He only has so much haki, so much stamina. Alright. So yeah, the previous chapters. I'm just gonna skim through it real quick, see if there's anything that sticks out to me that I should talk about. Yeah, it's very peculiar that Fugo would have horse legs. Considering that we know that on Punk Hazard we see a bunch of centaurs, but that's because of Law. You know, Law did that. It wasn't Caesar's science that did that. It took Law's devil fruit to do that. So we can rule out Caesar attaching. First of all, they'd have to find a gigantic horse to attach it to the Fugo, and two, they still would need Law's devil fruit. So it's most likely that somehow Fugo got a smile devil fruit. And if you think about, aren't there 10 numbers, and there's like a 1 in 10 chance that a number. I mean, there's like a 1 in 10 chance that a smile devil fruit eater will actually get the powers of the smile fruit. So maybe they did something where they made all the numbers eat a smile devil fruit and only one of them got the powers. But yeah, it's really cool to see where Oda went with Drake, Apu, and the CP0, having them all clash together. Yeah, I did not see that coming at all. I mean, Drake getting, you know, confronted by the CP0 is somewhat predictable because he's part of Sword and they're part of Shield. I didn't think it'd be an all-out fight. I think it'd more be like a confrontation. They make comments toward each other and then go on about their day or something. I didn't think they'd actually go into full-on fight with each other. I wouldn't think that Drake as a Sword member would want to really get into a tussle with the CP0. But he didn't really seem to have any hesitation. He just went right for it. He's attacking a CP0 member. We see that Zoro, using the same attack that he used against Kaido, that cut Kaido, didn't cut King. So interestingly enough, it looks like King has somehow tougher durability in some sense to Kaido. I think it's more that King has a smaller surface area and he can concentrate his armament haki in that smaller space. Whereas when Kaido is in his full animal form, he has so much surface area that he has to cover. I'm sure when Kaido is in his hybrid form, then his defense is comparable or possibly greater than King. But I guess we'd have to see if Zoro would have used that same specific attack, the Ashura attack against King, what would it do? If Zoro could even do that right now. But if they were equal, then it really wouldn't be that advantageous for Zoro to use that attack against King, because that attack didn't put down Kaido, it just scarred him. And Zoro's not out to scar King, he's out to defeat him. But anyway, Komurasaki is back, to be expected. I mean, it doesn't confirm it, but it basically leads one to assume that the person who stitched the scabbards back together was Komurasaki, which to me makes sense. Some people are saying no. That's so fun. Yes. Okay. Sanji seems to be getting the same skin and bone structure. I guess skin, maybe not bones, but the same exterior exoskeleton as his brothers. And there's something they say that particularly I like, it interests me. Something that Sanji says. He says something about like his, it might have been in the previous chapter, he said something about like his heart freezing up. And I think that's super, heart of ice, there we go. I can give the human body an exoskeleton. I can give it abnormal regeneration. I can give it physical strength. And most of all, an unfeeling heart of ice. And that's what Judge said. The Heart of Ice I find particularly interesting because of my Understanding Hockey series, in which I say the heart and the throat chakra, but I think specifically for Sanji more, the heart chakra is sort of the color of someone's soul. It is the color of their affinity towards what kind of hockey they're going to be best at. It's been Oda said in SBS that Luffy is great at has an affinity towards conquerors, Zoro has an affinity towards armament, and Sanji has an affinity towards observation. And I say in my theory, the fact that I believe that fire is the third level of and highest level of armament hockey, it's not weird or unnatural that Sanji, despite him not having affinity towards armament, would be great at the highest form of armor hockey. Because how it works is it's a spectrum. If Sanji has an affinity towards observation, that means he's a lot more spiritually inclined than like someone like Zoro, who is a bit more on the physical side, which makes sense because he's working with a physical object for the most of the time. But Sanji is, because he's so spiritual, then the armament hockey he specializes in would be the most spiritual, which is why he's so great at using fire. But here he's saying, unlike my brothers, well, no, he's not saying that, but he's thinking it. He's like, I'm differentiating from my brothers because I have feelings. I have a heart of passion, a heart of fire. And the opposite would be a heart of ice. I feel like if Sanji of becoming a soldier of science and becoming unfeeling, he would probably get worse at using fire armament hockey and get better at using whatever he specializes in that comes with his scientific augmented DNA. Because I think a lot of people are assuming that Sanji's affinity towards fire has to do with the experiments done by Judge. But to me, that doesn't make sense for two reasons. One, if we know that the experiment failed on Sanji and he has a heart of... he has a feeling heart, why would he maintain that power of fire that we've seen him use 2.5 years prior to this moment? We've seen him use fire abilities before. Well, I wouldn't say necessarily 2.5 years, because in like Thriller Bark and Impel Down, in Enies Lobby, he was using friction, right? But that was the start of it. That was him moving forward, to which he then started using Hell Memories, and he would spontaneously combust, which I believe to be armament hockey. So why, before this moment where he's, becoming more unfeeling and having an exoskeleton, why would he still be using those powers? I think that if he did went down this path, maybe he would develop powers that have to do with science rather than his own hockey and soul, which granted him fire. Who knows, maybe it would give him ice, ironically enough. That would be actually very befitting. Oh yeah, I said two reasons. I gave the one reason, which he's been using fire before this happened. And two, Sanji's whole story is being rebellious against his family, not being defined by the Vinsmoke. So it would be really, it would take away from his character if one of his most defining fighting abilities comes from his dad. It's like, thanks, you gave me this ability of fire. I think it'd be more great for his character if the fire was his own power. I went on about that longer than I thought I would. But anyway, the Kid and Law are really taking a beating. It's really impressive how much they're keeping up with Big Mom. I mean, they're getting burned and all of that. Kid really is getting beat up the most. But Law is surprising me, because he when he got defeated by Doflamingo, I feel like he didn't really take that much of a beating. But he really is stepping it up. Anyway, I was quite disappointed in Hawkins. I mean, the fact that he didn't even think about it himself, like, he's supposed to be a great strategist. He's supposed to be really smart. It's like, wouldn't he himself think, oh, he doesn't have a left arm? Like, he should already know that himself. It's and he's like so surprised, like, how did you cut off my arm? It's like, you didn't see that coming? I don't know. I also wouldn't be surprised if Hawkins somehow let himself get defeated. I don't know. But probably just giving him too much credit. He does have one last card, and this was 4 chapters ago, and we still haven't seen what Death Upright does. So. Oh, sorry. No. We do see what specifically that card does. Okay, sorry. I just remembered there was the card. I just automatically went to that card. It's the show me the end of this fight. Whatever card that was. The Tower. We could assume that he tried to use it and it failed. Right? But I just feel like there might have been something more to that card. Especially since the chapter is called The Tower. It's really saying, hey, this card is important enough to have the entire chapter named after him. Named after it. So I think there might be something more to it. In the Showman's card, the collapse of the old battle and the hidden meaning is a new way forward. Now, for him to have a card that's not in his favor, I mean, I don't know. You could interpret it as the card talking about Kid and Killer, but I don't know. It's just weird. Like, why would he have powers that really screw him over like that? But again, I might just be giving Hawkins too much credit. Alright. So I'm really gonna skim through this one real quick because I've been going on 30 minutes now. I had it planned that at 30 minutes I would switch up and people are really upset about Kinemon surviving. I don't know why. I mean, I've been watching One Piece long enough to know that it's just really rare when people die. And some people are like, well, I have this expectation that a good story at some point is going to have people die, and not having people die is what's holding this story back. And all that. It's just like, why do we have to put our own expectations on another person's work? Either the story's going to be good or it's not going to be good. I would say just judge it off of that. You don't have to say, this story's not good because it doesn't fit this mold or this expectation. Just say that it's not good because you have a particular issue with something. You don't have to say, like, Oda at this point has to kill off characters or whatever. Because that's, like, the opposite of creativity and freedom. The opposite of what this story is about. He shouldn't have to fulfill criteria. He should just try to make a good, entertaining story. That's it. interesting I thought I'd point out. Then we get to see awakening used. For Law, he applies awakening to his sword, which is, it really is expanding what we can think of awakening as being, because we saw with Doflamingo and Katakuri, they just kind of manipulated the environment around them to, extend their devil fruit powers. So we just thought, okay, well, that's what awakening is for that type of devil fruit. And then everybody would think, well, what does Law do? Because he already affects his environment. So it's interesting to see. It's almost like he concentrates the power of his room and into an aura field that he could then use on maybe any old inanimate object, but specifically his sword, which does happen to be a cursed sword, by the way. That's one of the things I say in my cursed sword theory, is that I believe that the cursed swords are used to channel the power of the user, whether it be Haki or devil fruit power, which I also speculate are one and the same. So yeah, also an interesting thing is if you look at the aura that Law is holding in his hand, it's kind of fluid. And there's sort of a liquid essence to it. You see bubbles coming off of it. And if you go back to Katakuri, when he was using his Chikari donuts, I believe they're called, they're just like power mochi from the floating donuts. When he would, attack with the donuts, he would use his fist. But his fist would be covered by this fluid aura. And I thought that was a very interesting detail Oda decided to add, because he didn't need to do that. Like, why did he show the aura on Katakuri's fist? We already know that awakening, it can allow devil users to manipulate their surroundings. So if he's manipulating his own mochi he created that's came from the ground, we already know that's devil fruit awakening. We don't need that added effect of the fluid aura. So that's something I found interesting, and I will be bringing up in a future theory. So yeah, it looks like he's just concentrating the power of room on his sword, and you can tell that he's doing that. It's not just like, oh, he applied aura to his sword like you would Haki. Because with Haki, it's just, if that was the case, like, what about that devil fruit awakening? He's literally using room on his sword because he stabbed through Big Mom, which is something Law cannot do with Haki. No matter how much training he's done since his fight with Doflamingo, there is no possible way he's got strong enough to stab through Big Mom. And you can also know it because he literally stabbed through her neck. I mean, I don't think even Big Mom could survive being stabbed through the neck, literally or physically. He's clearly doing a devil fruit attack that is not actually stabbing through her neck, but kind of is. Anyway, Kroom, K-R-O-M. That's weird. I'm about to look into that. Why does he call it Kroom? K-R-O-O-M. K-Room. Anyway, it creates shockwaves. It's liquid. It's very similar to Advanced Armament Haki and Fisherman Karate. Anyway, shock bile. And then Kid shows his awakening. And is this the first time we've seen Kid use awakening? In fact, is this the first time we've seen Kid use awakening on Big Mom? I think we may have actually seen him use awakening, but we just didn't know it was awakening at the time. The reason I say this is because right here he made Big Mom attract metal. So he's extending, just like, it's not that different from what Doflamingo and Katakuri and Law did, which is extending the powers of their devil fruit to something. With Doflamingo and Katakuri, they did it to the environment. Law just did it to his sword. What Kid just did was extend his devil fruit to Big Mom. He made it to where she became a magnet person, really. And the reason I say we may have saw him do this earlier is because there was this moment where Big Mom goes to punch Kid, right? And it was actually Kid trying to bait Big Mom. I mean, he really took the punch, that's for sure, but it just goes to show how durable he is. So he took a punch for Big Mom, but he did it on purpose so he could touch her. And when he touched her, he used repel. So that makes me wonder, was that awakening? Because he was applying his devil fruit power to Big Mom, who was not magnetic. I mean, who isn't made of metal. So it's like, how could he do that? And in the time, we didn't even think that could be awakening. He didn't mention it, he didn't say it. So we're just thinking, oh, that's just what he can do. But now that we know that him making Big Mom magnetic is awakening, well, we could assume or wonder, speculate, blah, blah, blah. Did he do awakening at that time? Anyway, I am done with that. I've been talking so much. So what I'm about to do right now is watch one of my own videos just to see, you know, is there anything new that I think about it? I didn't watch this video beforehand because that would defeat the point. I'm just gonna watch it for the first time in a long time right now and just give my raw initial reaction. So while I do, all right, let's get this set up. I can take this thing off. So yeah, this is my playlist. Towards the bottom, I just have like live streams and stuff like that. I just put them there just for the sake of putting them there. You can see that's the live stream we're doing right now. But yeah, my first video is understanding hockey in the playlist because that's the one I want people to watch the most. That's the series of videos that I'm most proud of, the ones I like doing the most. But if you look at the thumbnail of this, you can see Kumadori right there at the bottom. That's because that's the video we're gonna watch today. I picked one that was pretty short because this is kind of a test somewhat for me, what it would be like to make this. So here we go. I finally feel like I have enough to make this theory thanks to the reveal in chapter 974. The best way I could summarize this theory is that I believe that the two Kurozumi elders were working for the world government. To start this theory, we will look at names. Just in case you don't remember, Kumadori was the Kabuki monk from CP9. Kumadori is actually his surname. His given name is unknown. Kurozumi means black charcoal. Okay. And Kumadori means... So, I've always wanted to make a theory about Kumadori because he's actually my favorite CP0 member. Second favorite would be Rob Lucci. But I just always loved Kumadori because there was something about him that was so refreshing to see him be so goofy and silly and carefree, which is obviously something you'll find in all of One Piece. But I think what was refreshing about him was, for one, he's part of the Cypher Pole, which they're super hardcore, unfeeling, and just like savage assassins. So to see him be so silly was interesting, but he's also just so authentically silly. There's something about him. He takes himself super serious, despite how goofy he is as a person. He just, I think he's the character that had made me laugh the most in all of One Piece. I'm trying to compare. Google Translate gave me Blackbird as a translation for Kumadori, but I don't know how true that is because it's just Google Translate. You know, you can't take it too seriously. So yeah, I just want you to know to take that with a grain of salt. Someone has told me before, like, that translation is wrong, and they're most likely right that it isn't right. But I just figured maybe there could be a connection between the Kumadori clan and the Kurozumi clan. Kumadori clan being hypothetical for the sake of this theory. Black Bird. Not the most crucial piece of evidence, but it's something. Okay, with that out of the way, let's figure out why a CP9 member could be linked to Wano. Kumadori is someone who looks like he's a first-generation immigrant from Wano. From the way he acts to his physical features, he pretty much lives as a kabuki actor and talks in a poetic manner often, while also believing himself to be a Japanese monk. He has pink hair, which many from Wano seem to have out of the ordinary hair. Even the Straw Hat's resident samurai is a green-haired Marimo. Now let's connect the Kumadoris to the Kurozumis and Wano to Sacropole. First, let's look at Orochi. I don't really have much to say about him, besides the fact that Kumadori's hair can make him look like a multi-headed snake. That's about it, but don't worry, I saved the worst for first. Next, let's look at the old hag. So, the thing about Orochi having so little evidence towards being related to Kumadori actually works quite well for this theory, and I don't think I went into it enough, where Orochi might be like the last Kurozumi alive, because we know that there's the old hag, Kurozumi Higurashi, says it right there. Then there's the other old guy who's the shamisen player, and then there's Kanjuro. But we don't know where the old hag came from. We don't know where the old guy came from. And Kanjuro didn't grow up knowing who he was. He was told he was a Kurozumi. So, in a similar way that Orochi was told about his family history and all that stuff. Like, they're just told these things. But who's to say that whoever's telling them these things are telling the complete truth? So maybe, there's a Kumadori clan that has Kanjuro, maybe that old hag, maybe the old guy, and the Kumadori we know from CP9. And Orochi is just part of his own family. Maybe... Oh, is my mic turned off? Oh, it's my bad. Okay, let me listen. Huh. I don't know. Mic didn't show turned off. I'm hearing it in the back, but it might have just been something, an audio mess up momentarily. Thank you, Salamander Red, for joining. Zoro Kurozumi. Now that would be very, very interesting of a twist. He turned out to be a Kurozumi. Yeah. That would be such a troll because, it's been so, heavily sprinkled throughout the story that he would be a Shimotsuki, but if he would be a Kurozumi, I wouldn't dismiss that entirely as in terms of the story being bad. If Oda says he's Kurozumi, he's a Kurozumi. But then it's like, well, can you accept that as being a good thing in the story? I don't know. Anyway, yeah. Orochi might not actually be related to the old hag or the shamisen player or Kanjuro. That just might all be one elaborate lie. Now, why would that be a lie? Well, let's keep on watching this theory to find out why it would even be a lie in the first place. AKA Kudozumi Higurashi. She's shown to be a priest of some sort, so she shares similarity with one of the three defining features of Kumadori. Kumadori considers himself to be a Sennin and uses a shakujo, a Buddhist monk style. Also, think about how perfect her powers are for Sacropole. There are two prevalent jobs of a CP. So that one I kind of went over fast in the video. Sennin and uses a shakujo. That staff right there is from Naruto, wielded by Obito when he gained the powers of the Sage of Six Paths. I show that the old hag takes the form of Golden Lion Shiki, which is sort of like, well, how would she have ever met him? Like, she would either Golden Lion Shiki came to Wano at some point, which wouldn't be that crazy, because if you look at the way Shiki dresses, it's very, very old style Japanese, and that's what Wano's all about. So yeah, maybe Shiki actually came to Wano. I wouldn't rule that out by any means. But yeah, it's just very odd that this old lady would somehow have came in contact, because you got to touch Shiki in order to take his form. So it's more likely that she was somehow in the outside world, outside of Wano. And if that's the case, then she was either really one of two things. Either she worked as a pirate traveling the seas, or she worked for the government traveling the seas. And that's really the point I was trying to get at by showing Shiki there. Two prevalent jobs of a CP agent, and one of them is spying. It'd be hard to find a better power for that job than the ability to copy appearances. Moving on to Kurozumi Semimaru. There's really not much to say about him because of how quiet he is, but that he's related to music and poetry, like Kumadori. Kumadori often talks as if he's singing in a theater, and randomly says poems from time to time. His power is also perfect for a CP member. The other most important job is for them to be a bodyguard. Creating a barrier is just the power a human shield needs. Yeah, so the coincidence is just so strong that it's just like how could there be such a perfect coincidence that these two characters just so happen to have the exact powers needed for CP agents. And it's crazy for two reasons. One, the coincidence, obviously. But two, devil fruits are so rare. How did they even come across these devil fruits? So it's almost like they have access to devil fruits and someone specifically picked out these devil fruits. It's weird that they would just have the exact devil fruits you would need as a CP agent. Because that's really the only two jobs. It's to spy and to shield. Obviously being strong is needed, but they already have the Marines for firepower. They have that. What they need, those specific jobs, those two guys happen to have those devil fruits. Lastly, and the one most like Kumadori, is Kanjuro, the man who also lives his life as an actor. The name Kumadori is actually in reference to kabuki face paint, and Kumadori is both an actor and a painter. You are a descendant of the main Kurozumi family. So yeah, like he's being told who he is. And you notice it says the main Kurozumi family. Like there could have been branches within the Kurozumi clan, and maybe those branches went by different names. You know, maybe not everybody within the clan or the family that says the Kurozumi family all went by Kurozumi. Maybe there was Kurozumis, and then they themselves had people that worked for them, a high-ranking clan that worked for them that had the last name Kumadori. That could have been the case. Yeah, that's just one thing I've always found interesting about both Kanjuro and Orochi, is that they're told reference to kabuki face paint, and Kumadori is both an actor and a painter. If anything, the name is more befitting Kanjuro Kumadori. Kanjuro lived as a spy and tricked a group of people into thinking that he was their dear comrade. The very thing a Cypher Pole agent would do. What Kanjuro did to Odin, CP9 did to Iceberg. Perhaps the talent runs in the family. Now for the big question. Is this a trivial connection, or does it play a bigger role in the story? Here's what I think. The two elder Kurozumis were working for the world government and were possibly even Cypher Pole agents. Truthfully, they are most likely just working for Kaido, but there is a possibility that they answer to someone else and have their own objective. What makes me... See, I said that they most likely work for Kaido because that's just the easiest way for the story to progress. time, and they work for that or whatever, or you could just streamline it and just make every. I say it most likely work for Kaido if Oda were to be pressed for time. But the thing is, because they died, do we ever get confirmation that the guy who could make barriers died by Kaido? We know he died because uh, we know who has his fruit. The name is failing me. I cannot remember the name. For some reason, I cannot remember his name. But yeah, we already know Bartolomeo, I think. Bartolomeo has the berry fruit. So we know the old man died. I don't think we know specifically how he died. But it's weird that these characters would get killed off the way that they did. Vignettes have been shown, so I won't rule it off, and it'll most likely just streamline the story. It shows. I think that they might not have started out working for Kaido is the fact that Orochi implied that he had to have enough money to team up with Kaido. Higurashi and Semimaru had devil fruits of their own and even got their hands on the rarest devil fruit type that exists. I'm referring to mythical zone fruits. Not just anybody can do that. Kaido is probably resourceful, but he wasn't even a Yonko back then. If someone has easy access to devil fruits, there are two types of organization you'll most likely find them: the underground market and the world government. In fact, the clone fruit ended up passing on to Mr. 2 of Baroque Works, an underground organization. What connects the world government and the underground is the cipher pole. When the world government is known to get their hands dirty and deal with the underground, they use cipher pole to buy weapons, devil fruits, and even child slaves. It'd be interesting to see if the world government or cipher pole was involved in Kaido's origin story, considering the role Mother Carmel played in Big Mom's backstory. Also, that was another case of a rare and strong devil fruit being in the hands of the underground/world government and being passed on to a pirate. And keep in mind that it is very likely that many of the children Carmel sold went on to be cipher pole agents. So here's what I finally propose. The two Kurozumis were cipher pole agents sent by the world government in order to have spies on Wano. They would take power from within by assuming the roles of members of the Kurozumi clan and making a member of the clan Orochi the shogun. Orochi would be the figurehead while the cipher pole/world government would rule from the shadows. The world government actually wants to rule Wano in secret because they no longer want to have to work with the underground. Due to the fact that Wano is a closed-off country, they can openly mass manufacture war-waging weapons in an isolated country. They don't care if Wano becomes an awful place to live for the vast majority. Wano citizens would only blame Orochi, and word would never get out to the rest of the world. The world government would appear to be squeaky clean. Now, the two elders that are working undercover aren't actually from the Kurozumi clan, but rather the Kumodori. Within Wano is their own version of Mother Carmel, known as Yaman Bako. That was a lot to process. One of the things, that comes to mind as a viewer watching this, if someone else made this theory, I would think to myself, well, why, if the world government wanted to take over Wano, why did these hypothetical cipher pole agents, the old hag and the shamisen player, why did they work with Kaido? Benefit him. Well, I think there's two big reasons. One, you gotta realize that Kaido at that time wasn't a Yonko, so they might not have realized just how much of a threat putting him in charge was. Dismantle Ashura Doji or whatever, the Kiyoshiro Denjiro, like they're super strong samurais. They're like really, you know, they're guys that are like vice admiral, young, approaching admiral level in strength. Like they're really strong guys. Prospering. Now you look at when Kaido's in charge, the top guy, I can't even remember his name, but he's the guy who's like he had the frost beast thing. He's so forgettable. I don't even know his name. But Hyogoro easily. And that was supposed to be Orochi's basically, besides Kiyoshiro, who doesn't even belong to him. So let's take Kiyoshiro out of it. That was supposed to be Orochi's strongest samurai, and that guy was just fodder, basically. He was not, or Ashura Doji. So you know, that's the first reason the world government, and they just felt like work with him using the CP9, and the Daimyo and Shogun of Wano is not going to work with CP. Sorry, when I say CP9, I meant just Cypherpole in general and water and the world government. Yeah, the Shogun is not going to work with the world government. They don't trust them at all. But put someone like Kaido in charge, then you have an in. And then on top of that, they would have people on the inside like the old hag and the shamisen player, and maybe even they would convert Orochi and Kanjuro. They would have people on the inside to help feed them information. I'm also implying that they have this person we're about to talk about, Kumadori Yamanbako. It's interesting that they would, I say they a lot. Oda would create this character in an SBS, but create the character nonetheless. Say that name as well. Kumadori doesn't even have a first name. Kumadori is just known as Kumadori. That's just the fact that Oda would go out of his way to create this character does leave a lot of room for maybe this character could be relevant, can play some kind of role in the story. And like I say, she could be like Wano's version of Mother Caramel, where she's selling off children to the world government somehow that come from Wano. And she might not even selling the children right out of Wano. Because Kumadori is not born in Wano, at least according to the data book. He's born in the West Blue. But she might have done sold kids in the past, and maybe in the present they have enough Wano people who were born in Wano in this West Blue village that they can train and all of that. So yeah, I think that's the big thing about this theory of mine, that Kumadori could come from some kind of clan, is the fact that Kumadori himself is not born in Wano. That sort of makes it, a lot less likely. The Kumadori clan has been secretly working for the world government for who knows how long. Yamanbako has been raising and selling orphans to the world government. She is also probably an agent of the Cypherpole. Now, where does Kaido play into all of this? I see two scenarios. First, Kaido approached Orochi, and the Snake Man took the pirate up on his offer. The two elders had no choice but to go along. The second is that the elders were actually the ones who introduced Kaido to Orochi and planned their alliance from the very beginning. I prefer two because I think it would be more interesting if the world government has something to do with Kaido's origin. Anyway, what ends up happening is that one way or another, Orochi finds out that Semimaru works with the world government. The reason I say him as opposed to the old hag is because Kaido had her killed. Okay, so Kaido decides he doesn't want to work with the world government. Orochi then has to make a choice, side with the world government or Kaido. Seeing is believing, and he had never seen what the world government is really capable of. Yes, that's something I never really go into in this theory, is if the two Kurozumi elders were actually working for the world government. The question is, does Kaido know that? And I think whether it's yes or no, it wouldn't affect the present. It could be no, and he was just none the wiser. And we'll find out at some point that they were working for the world government the whole time. That doesn't really change much. It could be yes, and Kaido did know, but he didn't really care because he just doesn't feel that all that threatened by the world government, especially when he's living in Wano. And again, doesn't change much. Then the question is, does Orochimaru, does Orochi know that those elders were working for the world government? Well, it's the same thing. Yes or no, it really doesn't change that much of the story. No, he was just none the wiser. Or yes, he did know, but as you see in the present, when he's in front of the CP0, he doesn't really care. He doesn't feel all that threatened by them. So he could have known the whole time and just like, well, I don't really care. I'm siding with Kaido anyway. Whatever. It only makes sense he'd pick Kaido. Besides, the Dragon God is already there, and to make him leave would require a war. To conclude, what does this do for the story going forward? Although chronologically, in the past, we do have Kaido's backstory to look forward to. Perhaps he was sold to the world government by Yaman Bako as her prized child soldier, similar to what also happened to Lin Lin. It'd be interesting to find out that Kaido gets his tendencies to attempt suicide from the same person as Kumadori. Maybe this will even affect the upcoming war. The Paramount War started out as the Whitebeard Alliance versus the Marines. Then Impel Down escapees, Blackbeard, and the Red Hair Pirates joined in. Who will surprise us this time? Perhaps the world government's sword and shield will enter the fray. Kumadori might even show up again in the story. What if he has been in Wano this whole time? He sure would have no problem fitting in. That's it for... Yeah, at the very end I kind of just threw together, well, what if even Kaido was connected to the Kumadoris? Like, he at one point was sold. And that sort of just recycles and rehashes Big Mom's story. And that could be a good thing or a bad thing. In fact, it could draw together the Rocks Pirate as a whole, because if you look at Whitebeard's backstory, so maybe like it was just this, these abnormally strong kids, and Rock somehow got a hold of that information. Maybe he himself was sold. You know, it could all just connect one way or another. And that's sort of the job as a writer, is to connect these things together. Alrighty. But yeah. It's only 7:06. I only planned to do this for an hour, but that's not... I don't have much of an affinity for this theory. I like this theory, but I like this theory, but heart and soul moving. Even with driven theories about, oh, what could the plot be going through? I much more like to do things like understanding hockey, or, you know, what could Luffy's new gear fourth be like going into talking about the... Sorry, I hit the mic. I like talking about the power and talking about almost like the physics of this world. How does this world work? You know, hockey doesn't exist in our world, but that doesn't mean there can't be some kind of rhyme or reason behind the power in the world of One Piece. And I just like to look into that, to look into why is it by understanding hockey could you comprehend how it is devil fruits are made. You know, that's what I think is cool about the character Dr. Vegapunk. And he's obviously a scientist, but he's looking into devil fruits and all that stuff. He's clearly looking into the supernatural stuff and applying his scientific knowledge to it. And that's what I like to do. But and that's exactly why I picked this video, because I don't have some connection to it too much. Is because I just wanted it to test it out. What would it be like if I watched a video on stream? So, yeah. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, maybe you're someone who makes theories, whether it's in video, maybe you posted it to a forum, maybe you just want to send it to me in an email. If you want me to look at a theory, maybe it's your friend's theory or your favorite YouTuber's theory or anything like that, let me know. I have contact information in the description. I have it on my channel. You can just comment in the video, whatever it be, just let me know. And I could certainly work something out where I look at your stream or your theory or another person's theory on my stream. Because that's easily one of the most favorite things about One Piece has to do with just the world building and talking about that and the theories and all that. But yeah, that's everything I wanted to talk about today. I think the stream actually went quite well for the most part. Everything worked out. Even the music. Music was pretty good. Got a background track. A little TMI about the BTS, but I hope the music isn't too loud, not drowning out my voice. But yeah, that's it. Please, any feedback about the stream, if you want to take the time to offer me that feedback, that's so greatly appreciated. Just even watching, whether you watch, like, comment, everything you do